Hey everybody, it's Dean and I am back after a very long time, and today we're going to be doing a water simulation in Blender 2.9. So this is the first time I'm going to be working in it, and we're going to see there are one or two differences that I've picked up doing some practice runs. And today we're just going to make a nice simple liquid simulation which will interact with a cube, and we're going to make some glowing water or glowing liquid instead of just a normal liquid simulation. So this is actually per request from I think like 3 months ago, so I just want to say thanks to everyone who's been sticking around through my quiet period and who has still subscribed, and all my new subscribers, thank you very much. So let's dive right in and let's see what we can do. So if this is your first time using Blender or Blender 2.9, we're going to just have a look at a few things. So the first thing we want to do is open Blender, of course, and hit this new general file. And we'll be greeted with this little cube. So the first thing I like to do is pretty much save my file. So we can just hit the save here, Control S. I have a folder already, my blending folder, and I'm going to call this glowing cube liquid. Alrighty, and let's just fix that up there. Okay, and then I'm just gonna save my Blender file over there. The next thing that I want to do is go back to File and go to External Data and just click Automatically Pack Data into Blend. So yeah, that's the first thing that I like to do. Right, so we have our cube, not cubey. We have our cube here, and this cube is what we're going to be working with. Our liquid is going to interact with this cube. So let's get started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it by selecting the move tool over here and just dragging it up like that. And I kind of want to rotate it a bit. So to do that, I'm going to hit Shift Space and then R, and I'm just going to rotate it to kind of a position that I like, because I want the water to fall on the sharp edge and then kind of disperse from there. Alright, so the next thing that I want to do is add in my water source. So to do that, I'm going to hit Shift A, Mesh, and I'm going to use a UV sphere pretty much as always. And then to move that again, I'm going to go over here to my move tool and then just pull it right up here. I want it to have some distance when it drops, so that's nice. And then I just want to rotate this a little bit more like that, and yeah, that should work. That's fine for me. And maybe even take this up a little higher so that it's got some decent like gravity or decent impact. Alright, and that is perfect. The next thing I'm going to do is click on my object, go to its physics settings here on the right with all these icons. We're going to go to our physics properties, fluid, and then near by the type we're going to say effector. So it usually under normal circumstances should have the effector type as collision by default. So you can just make sure that that is like that. And yeah, that should be fine, just like that. The next thing we're going to do is click on our water source over here. I'm going to go to Objects, Quick Effects, and Liquid. And that'll pretty much set up everything like it should be. So the outline that you have here, this orange outline, is your domain. This is where the water will be. This is where the simulation will happen. The water will not go anywhere out of this domain. So we need to increase the size of that. So I'm going to hit S, I'm going to scale it up, and then I'm going to say Shift, Space, and S to scale it a little bit like this. Yeah, and then I'm just going to move that down with the move tool again, like that. So once again, we have a decent drop. Alrighty, and then you can see a weird apparition happening over here. So my water particles are pretty much exactly where they were originally. So if you see this, don't panic. All you have to do is click on your water domain or your liquid domain, come to your physics, and then we're going to go all the way down. So before we carry on with anything, we have to go to the cache directory and change that. So this is so that you can at any time continue after saving. So I'm going to go to my local blending, and because this is where I save my blending stuff, and I'm going to create a new folder and say liquid cube cache so that I know which cache this is. Double click on that and accept. So now it'll put all my information into that directly. So having already done that, we can see that my particles are back where I want them. But if we hit play on this like that, or that's what you're going to see, just that little bit, you can barely see it, and that's an issue for us. So let's take it all the way back to 0. Then we're going to click on our water source. All right, so now you can see, because we use the quick effect option, it pretty much set up a general simulation by itself. Over here by geometry, we want to change that, because that's what it's basically doing. It's taking the geometry of our UV sphere, turning that into water, and then just dropping it. And that's not what we want. We want to change that to inflow, because we want a flow of water, and that should be fine. So now, if we click on our domain, we can go over here all the way to the bottom again. By our type, it says replay. We want to change that to modular. And then we want to say is resumable. Very important. So in the previous version, 2.82 and 2.83, it did not have the is resumable option. If I remember correctly, I don't ever remember using it. It was kind of automatic. This will allow you to be able to pause your baking and resuming it again, so that you don't lose your information. Once we've done that, so we want to make sure modular is selected. We want to make sure is resumable is selected. Then we want to decide how many frames we want our simulation to be. So for now, I'm going to make it 100. We can change it, so it'll only play to 100. And then over here, I'm also going to make it 100, especially for when we do our rendering, so that it only renders 100 frames. So that is fine. Once you've done that, you can pretty much go and save again. So save after any major changes in case Blender does decide to crash or something like that. All right, so we've got that going. So now we can bake that information over here. Let's just hit bake. You can see it's baking pretty quick because it's a low resolution. I'm going to just leave it like that for the sake of this tutorial. And if we press play there, you can see we have a little flow of water that is interacting with that cube over there. And that's pretty perfect. So as you can see, the water or the liquid is pretty slow. You can change that. So to do that, we're going to click on our domain, make sure it's selected. We can free the data, and then if you come here to time scale, you can change the general speed of your water. So if I make that 1.5 and then I bake this data, we'll see that the liquid simulation goes a lot faster. So we're just going to let that bake quickly, and done. Very nice. So let's take that back, and there you can see you've got a quicker flowing liquid. And that is perfect. I kind of liked the slower liquid, but this is fine. Then we can also change the quality of our liquid. So I'm going to free up that data again, and you can see the resolution is 32. So if I bump that up to 64 and bake it, we'll have a lot more water particles, and this will increase the quality of your liquid. So we're just going to let that bake a bit, and then you'll see that there are a lot more little blue dots and sometimes different color dots as well. So let's just let that bake out quickly. Okay, and it's done, and you can already see that there is a lot more particles, and it looks quite nice. All right, so that is our simulation done and dusted. The next thing that we're going to do is add on some mesh. So we're going to pause that. We're going to make sure our domain is selected again. We're going to scroll down to mesh, tick that, activate that little drop down, and bake mesh. So baking the mesh takes a little bit longer, so let's let that bake, and then it will come right back to it. Okay, now our mesh has been baked in, so if we hit spacebar or play over here, we'll be able to see more or less how our liquid is going to be reacting. And I'm quite happy with that, so if we could click on this, there you go, that's a bit better. We'll be able to see quite nicely that our liquid is interacting with the cube that we've created, and it looks quite nice. So I'm happy with that. Now we can get around to making it look nice. So how do we do that? Right, so the first thing that we can do is I just want to go into solid mode on top here in the top right hand corner to see a little bit better how my liquid looks, and I'm pretty happy with that. So what we can also do is just right click on it, and we can go over here to shade smooth, and there you go, that's even better. Very nice. Right, so we can click on our sphere and delete that sphere because we don't need it anymore. If you don't delete it, it's going to appear in your render, and that's not going to look very nice. So it's best just to do that. Right, so let's go into rendered view, and this is where we're going to be working to make it look nice. Alright, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to be doing this in cycles. So we want to click on the right hand corner on our render options, go to render engine and hit cycles, and there we can see it looks more like water at the moment. So because we used quick effects, it did it by itself. It created our water material to look really nice, but we're not going to be working with that material. We're going to work with it, but we're going to be changing it up a little bit. We're going to make it a nice glowing liquid. So let's click on that water and then hover over here the top left until it makes that little crosshair. Click and drag down. We're going to go over here to editor type, and we're going to hit shader editor. Okay, so now we are where we want to be, and we want to change a few things with our material over here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that absorption, and the next thing that I want to do is delete the glass. And we're going to say Shift A, we're going to go to shader, we're going to go to emission, and we're just going to connect that to our surface, and there we have something happening. Alright, so now we can change that color to whatever color you want. I'm going to make it crazy blue like this, so it doesn't look very great at the moment, but it will. So the next thing we can do is come back over here. We're going to say Shift A, we're going to get a mesh, and we're going to add a plane. We're going to make that nice and big like that, and we're going to move it down, all the way down, kind of like over there. That's perfect. And then I'm going to delete this light over here, and there we can kind of see that it's a nice glow that we've got going on over there. So let's click back onto our water, and then we're going to play around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go add shader, click that in there, and then I'm going to add a glass shader, pretty much the one we deleted, and there, that looks nice. So now we can actually see, so if we just let that clear up, we can actually see through our liquid a little bit, which is really nice. So we've got a nice really cool glowing liquid, and we'll see it even better if we make our world color darker. So to do that, we're going to come over here to the right hand side to world properties, click on that, click on our color, and make it absolutely dark. And yeah, that looks nice. So I'm going to go back to solid view, and then what I'm going to do is just click on this, and I'm just going to add a black material to it. So there you go. So this is just, it helps you to work a little bit quicker. And then let's make this a bit bigger and go back to our rendered view. Alright, so now we have a nice reflection. We've got light shining all over the place. And that's pretty much it. That is a liquid simulation, a glowing liquid simulation that interacts with an object. And all that we need to do now is get a nice angle and place our camera. So we can even maybe take it back a little bit more to the left there, and then Control-Alt-0 to snap your camera to our object. And that is quite nice. I'm pretty happy with that. You can change the intensity of the glow, so let's have a look at how to do that. So we can just click on our water, drag this down again, just like that, and then by strength you can tone it down if you want, or you can tone it up a lot. It really depends on you and what you're after. So I'm going to tone it down a little bit, just so that I can see the liquid a little bit better. Yeah, something like that. Alright, so I'm happy with that. And now that that's done, we can just hit Shift F12 or Control F12 to start rendering our animation. And that'll get it going slowly. So very nice. And that's pretty much it. So we're going to let that render and then see how it looks when we're done. Okay, now that that has been rendered, so as you can see I changed the angle of my camera a little bit, but pretty much stuck to my original render. But once you've finished rendering, we can just go and we can save this, and then we're going to go to File, create a new file, and this time we're going to make a video editing file. Alright, so it's pretty simple. It's a very standard video editor. I'm sure you have seen me work with it if you've watched any of my other videos. Something that you'd like to just make sure is looking correct is your amount of frames that you're going to be rendering. So I only rendered out a few of these frames. So we're going to pretty much end and start it at ended at 36 over there, and then 24 frames per second. And yes, so let's have a look, make sure all that is right. Then we're going to just change our output, so wherever you want your video to be saved. For me, I have my blending over here, and I'm just going to save it over here. And then what do we do next? So over here we're going to go Shift A as if we are just putting in a new item, and we're going to go to Image Sequence. And we're just going to go over to where our image sequence has been saved. So we're going to go into Temp, and as you can see there, alright, so we've got 37, but you can just hit the A button, which will select all, and then add image strip. And if you hit play, there you can see your little simulation, and we can see our glowing liquid interacts with our cube quite nicely. Alright, and then you can just save that, and or pause it, and then when you're done with that and you're happy with the way it looks, you can just go to File, and then we can have a look at saving it if you'd like to, or you can just go straight to Render, and we can say Render Animation. But before we do that, we want to make sure that our file format is no longer PNG. Nearly forgot that one. So remember not to forget that. Go to File Format, and then hit that AVI, and then we can go over to Render and render our animation. And it goes pretty quick. As you can see, this is a real-time render, and there it's done. Finish. And then you can have a look at View or Image, and you can mess around with those. You can save just individual images if you'd like, or you can open it and have a look at where it is. Alright everybody, and that's pretty much it for today's little tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it, I hope it's helpful, and we'll see you again.